Okay, now we're going to go ahead and solve some problems by completing the square. Notice that when we're trying to solve, we're going to have a problem that looks similar to this. Notice this is not a perfect square. This is, so there's no way to do it just based on the way that it is sitting here like this now. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to go over here to the problem and we're going to take a look at the next one, which is this one. First step is to clear out the values on the left side. So all we have left is x squared minus 26x equals negative 48. And then we're going to go through those steps that we did in the last part. So we're going to look at our b. Notice our b is equal to negative 26. So we're going to cut that in half. So negative 26 over 2, which is negative 13. And then we're going to square the negative 13. That is 169. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add 169 to both sides. And the reason why we add 169 to both sides is because we have to even out the problem. If we add it to the left, we have to add it to the right. So now, knowing that, I can factor this right away without having to think about it. It's x minus 13 quantity squared. How do I know that? Well, I know it's minus because of that. I know it's 13 because of that one, or I notice that that's minus 13, so therefore it's x minus 13 squared. If I add these two up, I get 121. Then I can go through my steps that I did before in the first couple of problems, and that is I'm going to take the square root of this. I'm going to take the square root of that. I'm going to add a plus or minus in front. When I add that in, I then take the square root, so I get x minus 13 equals plus or minus 11. That then gets me, I'm going to add 13 to both sides. So I get x equals 13 plus or minus 11. I'm going to go one step further. I have x equals 13 plus 11, which is 24. And I have x equals 13 minus 11, which is 2. So there would be my two answers that I have for that problem. Okay, so now we have one that's a lot more complicated. So this one, in this particular case, we have a number in front. Our first step is to see if we can divide it out. We can't. So since I can't divide it out, I'm then going to, I can't divide it out evenly. I am going to divide it out though. So I'm going to take out a 4. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to divide everything by 4. Okay, notice the last term does not divide by 4. So those cancel, that comes out. So I can take out a 4 and I'm left with x squared. I'm left with 8. In this case, I'm left with 17 over 4. Now, how do I know that that was correct? Well, if I multiply this back through, 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times negative 8 is negative 32. 4 times negative 17 over 4, the 4s would cancel, so I'd end up with negative 17. So you always want to verify that you did the division correctly and you took out what was right. Notice I have a 1 in front. That's what I want. Because the only way this is going to work is if I have a 1 there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our b term. So in this particular case, we can go ahead and do that. But notice we have our 4 over here. Because I have a 4 over here and I have a 0 over here, if I divide both sides by 4, that 4 just disappears. So I'm just going to be working with this part right here, okay, and not worrying about anything else. So we really have x squared minus 8x minus 17 over 4 equals 0, because I divided both sides by 4. And then I'm going to add 17 over 4 to the other side. So this is going to get a little messy as we start playing around with it. I have x squared minus 8x, leave it blank, equals 17 over 4. I'm going to look at that negative 8. I'm going to take half of it, which is negative 4. I'm then going to square it. That's going to be 16. So that tells me I have to add 16 to both sides. When I do that, I can factor this. That's x minus 4 squared. How do I know that? Because here's my minus 4. That just goes right in there. And that equals, if I add these up, that's 17 over 4 plus 64 over 4. I have to get a common denominator. I add those up, I get 81 over 4. Okay, so my next step is to take the square root. So I take the square root, take the square root. I have a plus or minus there. So I have now, in this particular case, I have x minus 4, because we took the square root of that squared, equals plus or minus, the square root of 81 is 9, the square root of 4 is 2, so I have plus or minus 9 over 2. And then my last step, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I get x equals 4, remember we put the number first, doesn't matter that it's a fraction, plus or minus 9 over 2. Now, there's a couple ways that I can do that. I can get a common denominator, so I can say that really is 8 over 2 plus or minus 9 over 2, which is, I have two answers for this in this particular case. I have x equals 8 over 2 plus 9 over 2, which is 17 over 2. And I also have x equals 8 over 2 minus 9 over 2, which is negative 1/2. So there are my two answers, 17 over 2 and negative 1/2. And that's it for this video. We'll go to the next one.